SEO needs those towers of strength, and they need that strong foundation behind them. With my company, I help small businesses and I simplify SEO for them. So I'm going to be helping a few of you newbies to it, I hope, and maybe some of the more experienced people might learn something as well, or maybe get a tip along the way. So we all want that great success for our clients or for our own websites if we're doing them. But so many people jump into the latest trends or the things that everyone tells them they must be doing. And sometimes they forget those foundations. And so when they build their towers, they don't actually build up straight. They just seem to lean a little bit to the side. We need to look and remember some of the foundation things in SEO and make sure we're covering them and we're not leaving them out in the rain. So I went back and tried to think about what foundation things do we really need to go into. The first one is that we need our websites to be found. That's the first thing. Then we need them to be found quickly, and we need to give the searchers what they're actually after, what they need. So those are the three things that I'm going to delve into today. Now, one of the things that I hear from people is that they think that there's this Google sandbox that they go into. So whenever they take on a new site, they say that, well, it might be in the sandbox for a little bit of a time, we don't really get much traffic, and then suddenly it moves out of the sandbox and we start getting traffic. I'm not so sure I lean towards that thinking. So some people think there is a sandbox. I think that there's probably not a sandbox. What I think actually happens is that those sites are sitting there with no backlinks to them. So they're sitting off on an island. And as we know, Google finds websites by crawling through the links from other websites. So if you have no backlinks, you're not going to get traffic. And then suddenly along the way, you start to get some backlinks and Google finally finds you and starts to index your site. There are actually two ways that Google knows about your site and indexing it. And the first one is this crawling from other backlinks. The other way is through Google Search Console. I think it's one of the tool sets that everyone should make sure they've set up for their sites. A lot of web developers will set up Google Analytics and they'll forget Google Search Console. Now, it used to be called Google Webmaster Tools, and then Google's added a lot to it and made it a lot more useful as well. So now we have Google Search Console. And what we can do with a new site, if you take a new site over, is go and inspect that site. So you use the URL inspection over on the side, and then up in the top area, you put your website. Press enter, and then you can request Google to index your site. So you can actually start that indexing off a lot quicker. Now, I love Google Search Console. It's one of my favorite tools. And I'm going to give you a tip on something else that I use this particular tool set for. And that's, I love blogs, getting blogs up and using them for my keywords. And I want them indexed as quickly as possible. I want them done as quickly as possible. So my tip to you is, as soon as you do your blog and you've got your URL for your blog, you should come in here, use the inspection tool, put your blog's address in there and get it indexed. So it's indexed as quickly as possible and it can start ranking for your keywords. So that's a little tip along the way. I do love the tool, and before we leave it, there's another one that I want to actually talk about. So there's lots of things you can see with it. Links are one of the most important. You can see what links you're getting without having to go to another tool set. But the one that I really think is important is this Sitemaps one. So you can have your sitemap set up for your website, and you use a tool. Some of the plugins do this. Rank Math and Yoast will set up the sitemap for you on your site. And that will show the pages that Google needs to go and look at. It kind of tells Google what are the important pages to you and what you think are important. So it's really handy for Google, especially with extremely large sites, because you can really optimize your crawl budget by using this. So you get it set up with your plugin, one of those tool sets, and then you go into Google Search Console, into this sitemaps area, and you tell Google where that sitemap is. Now, I don't only just set this up for all my sites because of the SEO side of things. The other reason that I do it is that early on in my career, I helped a client bring their site back after it had been hacked. Because they had a sitemap in place, it actually meant that the reinstatement of the site was a lot quicker than it would have been if we didn't have a sitemap in place. So it's a little bit of a security and coming back from a hacker problem. So I make sure I have a sitemap in place for those two reasons. Another tool or another file that you need to check on your sites is the robots.txt file, TXT file. Now, this file lives on your root directory, under your root directory. So you can go and look at your file by going to your website /robots.txt, and it will open up with something like this area down here, where it will show you for the different bots that are out there, what it will allow them to see or what it will actually disallow them from seeing. So it's telling them what areas they can't go into. And there's valid reasons for that. There's things like when I do WordPress sites, I don't really want Google to be indexing the WP admin area. E-commerce sites, your checkout pages and things like that, you don't want to actually index. So there's valid reasons for things to be in the robots.txt file. It's just something that I go and look at to make sure when I take over a site that there isn't something in there that shouldn't be in there. And that's from an experience. Once again, I had a client site. We were trying to work out why this page wasn't ranking and wasn't getting up in the engines. And I finally went back and looked at the robots.txt file, and it was a Joomla site. Someone had put something in earlier and then renamed things the same as that earlier item, and it was disallowed. So for me, from that point onwards, it came onto my checklist, and I go and check robots.txt every time. Now, Google is important. It's important for us to be found by Google. And in terms of businesses, Google really has so many non-businesses out there, people pretending to be businesses, that they want to actually trust you. So a lot of us will go and put citations up with a lot of directories so that it's just another thing, another indicator to Google that our site is a real business, because it's being referred to from all of these different places. With those citations, it's a really important thing that your NAP is consistent across those citations and your website. Now, NAP stands for name, address, and phone. I throw in a W at the end for websites, and I'll explain that in a minute why I do that. But NAP consistency is really important. You need to have the same words or phrases used for each of these in the same way. For example, my company is Automate Now, and I can have it as Automate Now, or I can have it as Automate Now Pty Ltd, which is the company thing in Australia that we have at the end. I pick which way I'm going to do it, and I have it the same way in all of these sites. So I've chosen the one with the PTY LTD at the end, and I put that on all the citations. And on my site, I put it in the footer area so that it's on every page, so that it makes it clear for Google to connect the dots and say, this company is the same as that company. Addresses, once again, I've got a unit 12 and then my street address. I can put that as 12/ or I can put unit 12. They are different things. We want it to be the same in all of these sites. Phone numbers, we try as hard as possible to keep these the same. Brackets or not brackets, spaces or not spaces, try and make it consistent. I do know that some citation sites do make it different because they'll do automatic formatting, but try as hard as possible to keep yours consistent. The websites I added at the end, and there is a reason for this. Generally, with your websites, you actually have 4 kind of sites. You have your HTTP, the HTTPS, then you might have the same ones, but with the www at the start. All of these, well, 3 of these, will actually be pointing to one of the others. They get redirected, and they should be redirected to one of the sites. For example, mine are all redirected to this last one with the secured site and the www at the start. It doesn't matter really which one it is in terms of, I would definitely have it as the secured one. But you just need to work out what is your canonical one. So you can do that by putting in each of these and checking, once you've entered it and it goes to your page, what the URL is up in the top of your browser. Once you find that one, that's the one that you want to use for all of your backlinks. Why do I choose that? Well, that's because all the others are being redirected. So there's this slight delay. Now, it's not much, but it is a slight delay when it's being redirected. So I want the fastest one as the one that I'm using for my backlinks or from my citations. Wherever I have to put my website, I'm going to put the exact same thing every time in all of these places. And when someone's referring to my site, I want them to put this one as well. Now, I want it to be quick, and that's getting to the second foundation that I wanted to talk about, and that is that the speed is as quick as possible. Google wants fast pages because we want fast pages. I'll put my hand up. I'm one of the people. If it takes too long, once I go to a site, I will jump back out and go to another site. I'm impatient. And so are the rest of the users on Google. I want you to think about this with some of these stats, that if you have a file that you load in, say you put in a new image and you don't optimize it, and your site goes from 1 second to 10 seconds, the bounce rate is going to increase by 123%. Over double what you had will be bouncing out of your site. So it's important to make sure your speed is as quick as possible. Now, the great thing is that Google has actually told us this. There's not much that they tell us. They really don't like to give away much, but they have told us they want our mobile speed, not just desktop, the mobile speed to be fast. And I've had client sites who think their speed is great and their desktop is, but their mobile speed is slow. So you need to look at your mobile speed and make sure it's as fast as possible. Google also told us all of these core web vitals that we can look at. So these metrics that we can look at to make sure we are aligned with what they're checking. It's amazing that they've told us these, so make use of them. They gave us 4 to start with. They changed one on how it was worked out. They've given us another 2. Some people call that TTFB at the bottom. You can see these in Google Search Console. If you get enough traffic to them, you can see your real-time stats. If you don't get enough traffic, you have to use some of the page speed tool sets, which I'm going to give you some examples on those. And I have put on the document, so if you look at the slides afterwards, I've just given you some easy descriptions to try and explain what these all are about. The one that's my favorite is this CLS one, and that's the one when you go to a page and the page is still coming up, but you can see the button that you want. You click on the button, and by the time you've clicked, it's actually moved the page down and you've clicked on something else. I hate that. And that's really great that that's one of the metrics that they're testing and making people be better at on their websites. So to go and check them, I've given you the page speed, the Google page speed site. It gives you some great statistics, or you can go to GT metrics and use the defaults there. And they give you great information and waterfall information, so you can see what is taking the time on your sites and delve into those and speed them up. I've had sites where I've moved them from quite a number of seconds down to 1 second, and my rankings have just raced up in the keywords. So really important that you get your speed right. I use GT metrics. I actually use the paid one because I'm not in the States, because I'm in Australia. The defaults are to the States, and it actually doesn't give me the real indication of what's happening here in Australia. So I pay so that I can see my actual servers in Australia and what's going on. I've given you some of the metrics that you need to try and get in the right ranges for those core web vitals. Definitely try and get under 3 seconds for your mobile site. I really, if you can get it towards 1, that is the aim, okay? They've also told us about mobile responsiveness, so that's in Google Search Console as well. Don't have your buttons too close together. Make sure your text is big. Don't have lots of menus. Try and do scrolling instead. So that's a really handy tip that you get from Google. So follow the tips. And yes, the most important thing is that, yes, size does matter. Mostly speed problems come down to image sizes. I get a lot of this. I've had a photography site where they put up huge 5,000 by 5,000 pixeled images. If you think about it, this image that they're trying to display is only part of the page. And on a desktop, your 1920 by 1080 size, you don't need an image that's that big. Shrink the images, make them optimized, and make them optimized for the different devices. I use Divi on a lot of my WordPress sites, and I can choose the image that I put on a tablet, an iPhone, and a desktop, and I optimize for the size. So the mobile, because mobile's so important, you don't want it doing all this energy trying to shrink this huge image to a mobile size. Give it the mobile size that is set up for the mobile. Go and remove your excess plugins. That's just a lot of data that's going up and down and of no value to your site and slowing your site down. Minify it and cache it. So one little tip that I'll give you on the caching, if you do change your plugins for caching, make sure that you work out how to remove the caching completely from the last plugin. I've had sites where they've changed sites and the caching is still there from the previous plugins, and that's once again data going up and down. In terms of the image optimization, I use a couple of tools. Before I load the image up, I'll use tinyjpeg.com to shrink my image. I'll go into geoimage.com and I'll put some location data on it. Whether it helps for local SEO, who knows, but I throw it in just in case. And then when I've loaded it in, I have a plugin installed which also does optimizing, and I utilize Smush most of the time. Okay, the third part is that we actually want to go back to thinking about the searcher themselves. They're the most important person because they're the one choosing your site and hopefully converting into either leads, sales along the way. So I want you to take that step back and think, what is it that Google is actually doing? They're just trying to answer questions. So you need to take that step back and think, am I actually answering questions on my website? A lot of people forget that. A lot of people think it's about me. It's me, and this is what I do, and these are my products. Instead, it needs to be, what are you after? Here's the solution. Got a question? I can provide the solution. And here's some extra help, or here's another product that might help you as well. So it's all about thinking in that respect. Of course, words are the answer. Google needs to know that you can answer the question, and it only really knows that from the words that you have on your pages. So you need to have blogs. I have lots of people, lots of businesses who say, oh, I don't have anything to write. Do I really need to do a blog? Yes. The answer is yes, you need to do a blog. Preferably, you also do FAQs with short answers. And blogs, you can optimize your blogs and do lots of work on your blogs to make them as effective as possible. And lots of people get caught up in that and think that they have to have really huge blogs, 1,200 words, 2,500 words. If you're not doing them because that essay thought is putting you off doing a blog, then just do a 300-word blog. Heck, I don't care if you just do a 50-word blog. In fact, FAQs are best if they're about a 50-word answer. Because if they're about a 50-word answer, then they're more likely to be pulled up in your featured snippets. So those extra bits that are up the top of Google above the position rankings. The featured snippets, or they're also brought up in things like voice search. To do that, though, you really need to tell Google that this is an FAQ in the language that Google understands. And that's that structured data. And Anton talked about the markup tool that you can actually utilize. The structured data tool is useful. You can also use a lot of plugins these days, like Rank Math, and I think Yoast might do it in their premium as well. So utilize those tools to use structured data, which is the language that Google understands. So if they don't actually have to try and work out from the page what it's all about, then it will actually help them and they might move you up a bit. I do get good response from structured data on my pages. The other thing I wanted to point out is for someone to actually click on your page, they're reading your meta titles and your metadata description. So you need to actually make sure that you stand out on those. I have a lot of people that use plugins or the default in plugins, and which is company name / page title. And so they don't have to fill it out. It's all right. It's all filled out for me. But you are wasting such an opportunity. I go in for keywords and I go to the keyword and I search on it and I see the results that come up. And then I look to see what could make my page stand out in this. I need to make mine better than everyone else's. I need to answer the question that they're asking in the keywords. I need to give them something that makes them come to my page. And that slight word adjustment can actually make it an increase of a lot of percentage on your click-throughs. Now, I'm not hiding my head in the sand. Google does change the meta titles and the descriptions on about 58%, they say, of our results. There's reasons that they do that. If you do a long title, longer than the 50 kind of characters, then it will probably cut it and change it over. So make sure that they fit to the criteria. And just in case they change it over, make sure you have your keyword in the page title. Accessibility is important. You want actually to look like you're really great to Google, that you are helping with accessibility. So make sure in your images you put alt text. Once again, I had someone telling me they had a plugin that did it automatically for them. And I just said, wasted opportunity. Your alt text is another chance for you to get your keywords in. So make use of it. And the other thing is, once you get them to your site, you want to actually keep them on your site. The longer they stay there, the more that they can do on your site, the more likely they are to convert. So give them information down the side, give them other areas they could go to, show them your featured products, get them with their call to actions, get them to join your newsletters, put internal links in so they stay there. Google sees this, we think, as a very good sign. Once someone is dwelling on your site and staying on your site, they think you're a good answer and they will move you up in the rankings. And finally, this one's not really to do more with SEO, it's more with actually converting to sales, but that's what's behind SEO. A lot of people aren't putting their call to action in the top third of the page. A lot of people don't scroll down the page. They just stay on the top bit. So make sure your call to action, which might be contact me, book a session, or buy this product, make sure it's up in the top third so they see it. SEO there's a lot to it. It's not hard, but there's just a lot of steps that you should do. Make sure you have a checklist, mark it off as you go, and start off with a strategy, working out what's going to give you the best bang for your buck. If you're interested, any of you are small business owners, I'm creating a simple SEO course for small businesses. I'm not teaching you everything in SEO, but I am going to give actionable steps that people can do for their websites to help their websites improve. I'd love you to join the waitlist so I can tell you about it when it becomes available. And I love to give tips, so please follow me on my social media or connect with me. I'd love to connect to you all. Are there any questions? Look, backlinks are important. They're very important in moving up. But I would say your on-page is really important, particularly, well, actually, it's probably more your technical. I think your technical's the most important. You need to get that speed right. It makes such a difference. Get your speed right. Then you need the words. If you don't have the words, Google doesn't think you're an answer to the question. So it doesn't matter how many backlinks you have. If Google doesn't think you answered their question, you're not going to show up. So that would be my answer. To be in Google Ads, no. Google Ads have their place. There's no doubt about that. So I have, in Australia, we have superannuation, which is like our pension area. And I have a client who's in that, and our tax office has most of the parts on that first page because they tell them about superannuation. There's no chance for my clients to get on the first page for that area unless they do ads. So there are reasons that you do ads, but it's part of your strategy. You don't have to do it to make Google happy. It doesn't really connect there. I use a lot of tools. I'm a bit of a tool addict, I'll admit that. But in terms of the big tools, Ahrefs is actually my favorite. I put a lot of energy into that one. But yeah, I will say at Google Search Console and analytics, of course, I need to know my metrics. I need to know how I'm going. So analytics is important too. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks for watching the video. Please like or share it and subscribe to make sure you get future tips.